culture keeping is the responsibility of everybody, but it starts at the leadership. I would even argue the governance level. Your governance, your board of directors, your executive leadership teams really have to buy in to the journey.
Welcome, everyone. I am so excited to be here today with the legendary Kia Croom. Kia, welcome to What the Fundraising.
Oh, goodness. Legendary. I love it. I receive it. Thank you. And I'm pleased to be here.
Why don't we start with you just telling everyone a little bit about you and your work and what brings you to our conversation today?
Yeah, so my work has been 25 years of triumphs, of ups and downs, bumps and bruises along this fundraising journey, but I wouldn't change anything about it, right? I have been a fundraiser to nonprofits across the country, primarily led by people of color. Why? Because I'm a person of color. I get it, right? And I get in where I fit in, in terms of this all hands on deck need for solutions to social issues that I believe stem from inequitable policies, right? So I have been on this journey. I wish I could say I've loved every moment of it. I haven't, but I've loved a lot of moments. I've made a tremendous amount of impact that I'm richly, richly proud of along the way. And I work at the intersection of fundraising and more DEI kinds of related topics. So it's an interesting space to be in this space and time, but I'm here to stay.
And the work you're doing for this sector and, from individual fundraisers to sort of the sector education, I think is so important. I'm wondering if you would start by sort of breaking down for us that intersection between the DEI work that you're doing and the fundraising for folks who might be more unfamiliar with what those have to do with each other.
Yeah, so the way I look at it, the fundraising work that I have done throughout my career has been all about addressing structural inequities. Structural inequities, I don't want to assume that everybody understands what I mean when I say that, so I will explain. My work has been grounded in addressing social issues like poverty, education inequity, goodness gracious, health inequity, climate injustice, right? Working with nonprofits across the country that have been committed to remediating these issues, right? Or doing the best that they can on a regional, national, even, global level, right? In working with those causes and being a fundraiser for organizations in those cause areas, it's impossible to effectively fundraise without interweaving that story around the why. We're not just doing this because it looks cute. We're not just doing this because we want to help people. Yeah, we do want to help people. Yeah, I did go into fundraising because I always thought about the little girls and boys like me in the hood of East Oakland, which is where I grew up, during the height of the war on drugs, right? I remember I have very visceral memories of really traumatic things, right? And when I really thought about it, what I had always been in pursuit of, when I was old enough, right, to know better, to do better, I was always in pursuit of what can I do to make it easier from somebody coming behind, right? I never forgot about those little boys and girls like me. And I felt so fortunate to make it out of the construct that I lived in. What am I talking about? A construct of poverty. So I got into this space to play it forward. So when I say I work at the intersection of fundraising and DE&I, I'm working in a space to address social issues for Black and Brown people specifically. I am working through a lens of racial equity, a lens of racial justice in some cases. The two are very different. to uplift communities of color.
Okay. The sort of layers of like the layers that you're talking about here feel so like complicated in terms of particularly how money moves through society in so many ways that perpetuate oppression, that perpetuate inequities, and then the roles that sort of fundraisers are asked to, or the gaps that fundraisers are asked to fill to move money towards correcting some of those issues. But while they're being asked to do so in a system that is continuing to reinforce that inequity in so many different ways, whether it's the power dynamics between funders and fundraisers, or power dynamics inside organizations that, particularly like I think oppress and marginalize Black and brown fundraisers. How do you like think about sort of pulling apart those layers in ways that take care of the fundraisers? Because I know like you have so much care for this sector and for the fundraisers that you work with. And I think, I oftentimes like have these moments of like, okay, well, is pushing a fundraiser towards doing that thing that ultimately might involve, a like toxic situation or an inappropriate response from a leader, right? Things I can't control as the fundraising coach. I'm like, oh, am I setting them up for more hardship, or am I putting them in a position that it is an unfair position that they're in, because there's so many unfair sort of like systematic pieces here. I'm curious, like when you're working with organizations, how do you sort of pull those things apart?
How do I pull those things apart? So that is a complex question, but I'm going to answer it.
Okay.
I'm gonna answer it. What I'm going to say is this. There's research that shows that within the nonprofit sector, there's an advantage and a privilege associated with being white, right? And working in those spaces. Don't get mad at me if you're watching this and you're, oh, she's pulling the race card. No, this is proven, right? There's an advantage that whites in this space in fundraising and nonprofit leadership, the racial leadership gap is real. Black and brown people do not predominate nonprofit leadership, right? This is a fact. So how do I pull that apart? Number one, an organization that wants to work with my firm. And I want to be clear, I don't work with everybody that wants to work with my firm, because there's a certain kind of constituent that wants to work with my firm. And those are people that are serious and want to get down to business, right? So the organization that's kowtowing around systemic inequity, workplace racial trauma, racial discriminations, no, y'all ain't coming to me because y'all don't want to hear that. The organizations that are coming to me are the organizations that acknowledge, yeah, we have a problem, at least where the leadership is white. Yes, we have a problem and we want to address it, and we want to become more equitable and inclusive, right? We want to right some wrongs, and we want to create a workplace where people can thrive, period, right? Now, in order to do that, there are things that we have to do to protect people, Black and brown people, women, right, from these harms. I love the fact that you say, you know what, as a coach, I'm thinking about this. In my coaching modality, I'm thinking about, am I sending somebody into, an open flame here or into open fire, right? Because so often people are not. And that person could be your boss. It could be your manager. It's been my manager who, when I wanted to verbalize things, and I'm saying things because I don't have another word to use right now, but if I wanted to verbalize the discomfort I felt in talking to a specific donor, whether it's an individual or a company, I'm being asked about my hair, right? Hasn't happened to me before, but it's happened to people that I talk to. you're being asked why you choose to wear your hair a certain way or why you choose to dress in colors. I'm Black. We like color. I don't run from that. I don't listen. The stereotype is there. Yes, Black people, brown people, we are festive, right? We come from communities where that's celebrated and cherished, right? So that Black woman or that Black man or that Latino male or female or otherwise that is having an encounter with a donor that doesn't really get the concept of inclusion, it's usually because the organization isn't touting that, right? The organization has been touting more the same. So instead of seeing Kia in her fashionable 26-inch cornrows, they get to see Liz with a bob and bangs. And she might be wearing a pinstripe suit, and they're perpetuating that instead of taking opportunities to show the Kias or the Manuelas or the Jashans that are in the development department, right? So I said all of that to say this, uprooting that and really getting to what the core workplace culture is. What do we inhibit? What do we encourage, whether we're saying it or not? Do we celebrate diversity of thought, or is it more the same? Do we amplify the voices of our fundraising professionals of color, or are they singing in the background like the Pips singing with Gladys Knight, right? You've heard of Gladys Knight and the Pips, right? Are they singing in the background, or do they have an opportunity to grab the mic at times, right? So the way that I get to unpack some of these challenges is to really just take a good look at what's happening internally. What is your creative messaging saying about your organization's values around inclusion, diversity, and equity? Are you hearing from Liz all the time? Or do you occasionally hear from Kia? Who's the face of the organization? These are the things that we get to look at as part of that unpacking.
I so appreciate you breaking that down like that. And I'm curious, I've been thinking a lot about community-centric fundraising and white supremacy culture in fundraising, and then sort of the work that I do around looking at our nervous system, right? And what causes dysregulation in our nervous system, and what are the things that, lead us towards, in many ways, a lot of pillars of white supremacy culture around binary thinking and perfectionism and sort of all these things we know are cultural pieces there. And then someone said something to me once. There was sort of this, very uncomfortable situation that was happening. And I had someone kind of side texting me about it around making sure I was okay. And I was like, discomfort is a part of this work. I do not expect to do my own anti-racism work, my own sort of deconstruction work without getting uncomfortable. That, of course, that is going to be a part of the work. I feel like sometimes in our sector and in all sectors, but sometimes maybe even more so in nonprofits, because people are they so desperately always want to see themselves as the good guys. And they feel like the moment they are presented with some data that might not be quote unquote good, they get defensive, their nervous system gets activated, they go right into all those things. And then it stops this transformation, this conversation that you're talking about, that really involves us to dig deep and sit in our discomfort and walk through that and walk forward. I'm curious if you have any sort of strategies or ways you've worked with clients or things you would recommend that support either individuals or organizations to keep putting one foot in front of the other when those conversations start to get uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, what it boils down to is culture keeping is the responsibility of everybody, but it starts at the leadership I would even argue the governance level. Your governance, your board of directors, your executive leadership teams really have to buy in to the journey of being that anti-racist organization. I can't even tell you the last time I saw the words anti-racist because we're seeing a lot of divestment. We're seeing a lot of backsliding around the DE&I and the anti-racism. I mean, I'm just hearing myself say that is just like, wow, I haven't seen that word in several months. So it really does start at the leadership levels. It starts with leaders saying, hey, I'm making a commitment to being a more inclusive leader, and I'm going to model that, right? And here's how I'm going to model that. And anyone who is going to be in a leadership role here must buy into this, because if you have holdouts, it's going to show, it's going to be obvious, and it's going to be nasty, long, and brutish. And it's going to be counterintuitive to the work that everyone has to lean in and do. So it starts at the top. And what those leaders have to do, I want to make sure I respond to your question, is yes, they have to do their own unpacking work. They have to do their own anti-racism work. They have to be sold out and avowed and committed to anti-racism, right? As a life journey. You don't just become anti-racist overnight. It's like, who doesn't know someone in the recovery community? I know people who are in the recovery community and they acknowledge that they're in recovery for the balance of their life, right? Because acknowledging that they're in recovery is core to ensuring that they remain sober, right? So this is a perpetual journey, and it really starts with that introspection. It starts with that comfortability in speaking up and speaking out, but not even always just speaking up and speaking out. Sometimes it's just giving somebody else the mic and giving light to their perspective, their nuanced experience, their lived experience.
Yeah. What do you think the implications are for our sector with that backsliding? Like if like
Oh my
when, yeah.
God. Oh my gosh. What do I think about the implications? The implications are deadly. And somebody might say, oh, here Kia goes, being dramatic. No, the implications are deadly. Let me elaborate on why. The implications are deadly because I have never seen quite as many vicious and painful attacks on Black women as I've seen lately. I've seen some very disheartening attacks. I'm not going to get, super uber specific, but if you want to do a little reading, go to LinkedIn and tap into what Black women are saying regarding their lived experiences and leadership roles, not just within philanthropy, within nonprofits, but even within the corporate community, right? Do a little research of your own, right? And it'll be very telling what some women are experiencing, the duress, the humiliation. The backsliding has so many implications. I mean, I'm aware of more conservatives and groups suing organizations that are doing diversity work. That's happening. And saying that it's reverse racism for them to do that work. I'm aware of the psychological harm, which I really feel is just flat out gaslighting, for organization led by a person of color. I experience racism and discrimination every day in my existence. And for me to be doing deeply meaningful work to create more equitable conditions for other people of color, to be accused of perpetuating racism on the white community when I have no power, the emotional fallout from that is just, I can't even put it into words. But not only that, the financial harm that's being done. when you have an organization that is being, in litigation and going through court proceedings to defend the very work they're doing and the why behind it, that's exhausting. But not only that, it's very, very costly, right? The tiptoeing that corporations are doing and bowing out of DE&I efforts, I'm aware that some of those people that were hired in 2020 no longer have jobs, and those companies no longer even have those divisions. And some of those divisions were tasked with philanthropic giving to organizations led by and serving Black people. So those divestments and those scale backs are not only impacting talent, not only impacting people, right, that lost their jobs and their maybe perhaps their livelihood and ability to take care of their families, but money is being redirected from philanthropic giving to these organizations and these communities of color, and being put in other places. That is harmful. It's harmful. So the implications, I mean, I could keep counting. I could keep counting. It's really, really getting difficult to watch. And I'm running out of things to tell women of color, specifically Black women, to keep them encouraged right now.
I really appreciate you sharing all of those pieces with folks. And I think there's there are the sort of like immediate implications of that, and then the ultimate downstream implications of that in terms of people leaving, from companies to organizations to the sector. I think we've sort of explored, on this show, the declines in giving that we're seeing across the sector, and then also the sort of exodus from the workforce. And obviously there's a lot of research and literature, that supports and goes into additional detail around why Black and brown leaders are leaving in higher numbers or more quickly because of the unmanageable environments that they're being asked to operate in. And I think we're seeing both of these things happen at the same time, this decline in giving, this exodus from the sector. And those are really rooted in the same problem, in my opinion, which is this, the word you said a few times when we were talking about all those implications is like exhausted, and I think about like how we're, for Black and brown fundraisers in particular, they are watching a lot of their fundraising expectations rise while the, challenges they're facing increase, and they're being asked to raise more and connect more with donors while they're given hurdle after hurdle to get over in order to take those actions they're being told to take, and this impossible situation people are being put in.
Yeah, it's quite a bit. So I spend a fair amount of time fundraising and helping organizations to fundraise, but I'm also spending more and more of my time talking to Black leaders, brown leaders in this space about how to attend to themselves, how to manage themselves so that they don't flame out, so that they keep, in the fight, because we need them, right? And so that they're shored up for the work ahead. My message to them is to double down on how they're caring for themselves. That is our only saving grace right now. It's our only saving grace. Learning how to work at a pace, a cadence, pace, whatever you want to call it, that's comfortable for you, where you can, be impactful within your organization, how you can find your voice, right? So that when you have been rode over that last time, When you've been cut off by your boss that last time, that boss that has all the answers, that, never seems to take interest in the wonderfully creative ideas that you have, for that, like, where do you find it, right? My anecdote is nurturing and investing in self. And the more that I do that, the more that we do that as women and men of color, and we really fall in love with ourselves and taking care of self, we establish boundaries. And when we establish boundaries, we set the rules on how folks can treat us, right? And you eventually get sick and tired of getting sick and tired, and you move the hell on. And you go places where you're celebrated. Period. So I am done with telling people to just kind of No, I can't do that anymore, because Mallory, it's costed some people their lives over the last 4 months, 5 months. The sector has seen, I want to say 4 Black women in this space have lost their lives at work, during work, as a result of work. The woman who committed suicide and cited that her manager, had abused, bullied, and harassed her on multiple occasions, and she did not get the help and the support that she needed. So it's literally life or death, and I'm encouraging leaders to choose themselves and their care and prioritize that above anything else. I want them to have Itutu, as I shared with you. Itutu being a Yoruban word, a word in the Yoruban culture that means calm, peace, and serenity, right? I feel as though we deserve that.
Thank you for sharing that. I don't know if you have, I know we do have a lot of folks listening to this, I think, who are going to appreciate hearing that recommendation. And I'm wondering if you have any strategies or things that you've personally found helpful or have been helpful for your clients when they feel that impulse or that anxiety to prioritize things over themselves. I think what I hear so much from folks is I know I need to prioritize taking care of myself, but before I know it, I've jumped in to help, on something that I really should have had a boundary around, or I took something on the chin that I really should have walked away from. Is there anything that you think is helpful in creating some space for folks to be able to make sure they are taking care of themselves in that way?
Yeah, it's boundaries. Folks have to establish boundaries. It could be something as simple as my EA does not and will not schedule me for back-to-back meetings. This is a rule within my company. Can I encourage other workers to adopt similar behaviors? You'd be surprised. Well, you wouldn't be surprised. How many people I talk to in the course of the week and they're like, oh, I've been in back-to-back meetings. I'm not impressed. I am not impressed. I want to know, are you okay? And then I want to know why you're doing it. Because guess what? Especially if you're Black or you're brown. Because guess what? We're still getting passed over for promotions. We're still not being heard. So what is it really getting you to subject yourself to that, right? It's not giving. It's not giving. As the young people say, it's giving, it's not giving. I believe it boils down to boundaries. What boundaries are you setting for yourself? And those back-to-back meetings is one. I will not take a back-to-back meeting. If it means that, we have to push something out and the person that wants or feels like they need that meeting is upset about it, I think they'll be okay. I think they'll be okay. If it means that I lose a client or a prospective client, I don't want to work with you anyway. Because if me prioritizing my wellness and the way that I show up is problematic and is not a concern for you, we don't need to invest the time together in partnering and working together. Because at the end of the day, I need to be well, and so do you. So I really think it boils down to those boundaries. And I have so many boundaries now around what I allow people to perpetrate on me, period, and not being apologetic about it.
And I think something that you're saying, that I think is really important is like working with someone like you, being surrounded by people who share some of those boundaries, or even the goals of setting those boundaries is really important, because what you said at the very beginning, like, I'm not celebrating your back-to-back meetings, it's like,
Oh,
if you're in a group of people who are like, where it's sort of like this badge of honor, how busy you are, then it's going to be hard to set and uphold different boundaries than what sort of the culture around you continues to reinforce, and like through your friends and things like that, and the people you surround yourself with. So I think that's a really important reminder.
Right. I'm telling people not to do that. I don't care what color you are. I'm telling you not to do that. I'm telling you that you need some time in between those meetings to regroup, to get up, to get a glass of water, to look out the window and watch the birdies fly, to go and, get a hot cup of tea, right? To prepare for what's on your calendar next. Like, you deserve that. You deserve that. You deserve to show up in your best light. And I don't care who it is. Research shows it's not good for us. But we do these things that aren't good for us. And we work in environments, back-to-back meetings, not having back-to-back meetings. I don't feel like that doesn't mean that doesn't suggest that I'm not being productive. I would argue that I'm able to be more productive if I'm more composed and I have more time, right? So yeah, no, we don't do martyrdom. I don't do martyrdom. No, 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 no. I'm committed to thriving and showing up as my best, because as a Black woman in this space, I don't get the benefit of the doubt. If Kia doesn't show up and if Kia isn't on her game, it could cost another woman behind me an opportunity because someone walks away perpetuating that stereotype. Well, that's why I don't want to hire a Kia or someone that looks or, like her, because look how no, you're not going to catch me slipping. I'm going to be composed. I'm not doing them back to back. I'm going to get my tea. I'm going to get my water. I'm going to look fresh in my makeup and do whatever I need to do so that I'm on point and looking spiffy in my next meeting, whatever time of day that is. No martyrdom, folks. No martyrdom. Does that help?
I love that. Oh my gosh, it's so great. And I think it's a message that a lot of people are really going to appreciate hearing. So thank you. Thank you so much. Will you tell everyone where they can go to follow your work, connect with you, work with you? And I'm so grateful.
I am happy to do it. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Kia Croom. You can find my company, the Global Office of Kia Croom Fundraising and Philanthropy, on LinkedIn. You can find my vlog and podcast, the Black Fundraisers Podcast, Fundraising Coaching with Kia. You can find those on YouTube. You can tune into some of my blogs. I mean, because I think I'm a pretty hip fundraiser, Mallory.
You are. Oh my gosh.
I enjoy a good party. I enjoy a good rap song. I love hip hop, y'all. I love rap and hip hop. Oh my gosh. So yeah, you can keep up with me there. And if you follow me or connect with me, KiaCroom.com. That's the website, KiaCroom.com. And you're likely to get anything from me. I mean, you might get me talking about working with a client. You might read about me going to a Wu-Tang Clan concert. Who knows, right? Because these are all parts of my identity and what I do. I'm a journalist. I write about hip hop and stuff. So you got to be along for the ride, but I can promise you an interesting ride.
Amazing. Thank you, Kia. I know. I want to go to a party with you. I'm in. Wherever I sign up. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for the work you do for our community, for this sector, and for sharing all of your wisdom and encouragement today with everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It has been a delight. Thank you.